creator, Emily here, otherwise known as That Mom with a Laser, and it's on this channel where I attempt to simplify what it's like to operate a laser engraving machine. It's the fall, which means it's time for a seasonal laser tradition, which is, you guessed it, engraving pumpkins. I did this last year and it was so much fun. If you want to catch that video, you can do so here. Last year, I decided to gift pumpkins to my son's teachers, and oh my goodness, did they love it. They raved about it for weeks. So I want to go ahead and do that again this year, but I'm going to try a couple of new things and I'm going to share them with you in this video today. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell button so you get notifications every time I have a new video out. And with that, are you ready? Let's go. If you've seen my video from last year, then you know that I just used scrap wood to stabilize my pumpkin and I engraved everything with my standard 2-inch lens. But we're going to switch it up this year. All right, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is lower my laser bed. Then I'm going to remove some of the blades so that I have some extra clearance for the larger pumpkins that I have to engrave. Most of the pumpkins I'm going to engrave today, though, are pretty small, anywhere from about 2 to 4 inches. The most notable difference, though, is that I'm going to use a 4-inch lens instead of a 2-inch lens. I didn't have this last year, and a 4-inch lens is better suited for working on curved surfaces, such as things like pumpkins. If you want to learn more about when and why to use a 4-inch lens, then make sure you watch this video here. Now that I have my nozzle set up, I can go ahead and stabilize or get ready to stabilize my pumpkins. And another thing that I did differently this year was use Play-Doh. This was great. If you don't have any, I would highly recommend just stop over at the dollar store and grab some Play-Doh because it comes in so handy when you're working with odd-shaped items. It worked like a charm, and it's my new favorite go-to for pumpkins and other odd-shaped things. Now that I'm set up, all I have to do is take my pumpkin, and usually I like to try and find the flattest part of the pumpkin. That can be hard to do, especially with one like this one that's so nicely round. But you know, if you do have a pumpkin with a flatter side, you're going to want to try and use that end. Then I'm going to take my calipers and measure or kind of eyeball how big I think I can make this word. And then I'll take those measurements and I'll use them to size my word in LightBurn. Once I'm done, I'll go ahead and set up my pumpkin and use my Play-Doh to keep everything nice and steady. Okay, since I mentioned LightBurn, let's pause for a minute and jump into LightBurn so I can show you how I set up the font for this pumpkin. It's very simple. I'm just using a font here. I'm going to write out the name. I'm using the font called Gumdrop Barista, which I think is really fun. I'm going to set it to a fill and set it to the engraved settings that I use for a pumpkin. As you can see here, I used 300 speed, 50 power on a 60 watt Mira 7. Okay. Then I'm going to size the word according to the measurements that you just saw me do, and that was about 2.5. But you see the height, when I measured it with my calipers, I had about 1.5 inches that I could work with here. So I am actually going to just stretch it just a little bit, not too much, but that way I can make it a teeny tiny bit bigger. Okay, and sometimes, hold on, let me zoom in here so you guys can see. I might even kind of squish the word together using the spacing here. So this way I can make it a little bigger too. So you just kind of manipulate it so that it still looks good and you can make it a little bigger within that, space that you have to work with. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have this set to a center origin. You're going to find that right here on the right where it says job origin. And this way, when I go to frame it on my pumpkin, I'm going to eyeball really where I think the center of my pumpkin is, and it's going to frame it out from this point. So it will start in the center, and you'll see the red dot pointer go up, over, down, and around the word. So let's head back over and let's engrave the pumpkin. Okay, bear with me because I'm going to try my best to explain this next part as best as I can, honestly. So now I'm going to eyeball the center part of the pumpkin, where I think the center of the word Gianna would fall if I engraved it, okay? That looks fine to me. And now I'm going to raise the laser bed and I'm going to use a focus gauge so that I can get my laser in focus with the highest point of the pumpkin. If you have a Mira, whether it's a Mira 5, 7, or 9, they all focus at 8 millimeters. So there we go. I've got it in focus with the tallest point of my pumpkin. So right now, my laser is in focus with the tallest point of my pumpkin.
However, the moment my nozzle moves over to the left or to the right to engrave, it's going to be out of focus because of that curved edge, right? If you see here, there's definitely more space between the pumpkin and my nozzle than there is from the center point of the pumpkin. Because of that, I'm going to raise the laser bed just a little bit so that I can spread that range of focus. And now, my friends, it's time to burn. Now, depending on how many pumpkins you engrave, you're going to start to notice a buildup of fibers and residue. So you just want to make sure you're paying attention to that and cleaning things and wiping everything up frequently.
Okay, so I've engraved a ton of my pumpkins and now I need to clean them. So I am going to use a bleach and water solution. Now these are going indoors, so I'm not concerned about animals or anything getting to them, but if you were going to put this outside, you might want to consider using water and vinegar instead. So, I mean, I'm just really eyeballing it here, but I'm using some water and some bleach. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off the residue. I'm going to clean off all of that, sap and juice from the pumpkin. And then I'm going to scrub in it. I just use a little scrubber thing. And I'm going to scrub in the solution here. And this is going to help kill any fungus and help it last longer. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna clean up all my pumpkins and they'll be ready. Okay, so I have washed them all and I ended up using soap, and I had to scrub harder than I remember because this time I engraved them all and then I washed them all at the same time. And I find that when you wash them right after you've engraved them, the residue comes off much easier. So I would recommend rinsing it off right after you engrave it and not letting them sit for a few minutes like I did, because it was harder to clean off. So now I'm just going to get the bleach and water solution and scrub into them. And I'll do that with all of them. And then I'll rinse them one last time and I'll let them dry.
While the pumpkins dried, I decided that I wanted to dress them up with some Sola Wood flowers. I do have a video on how I do this here in case you want to see it in detail. So I'm just going to take some paint, mix it with some water, and I've used enough water to submerge my flower entirely. Then I'm going to add some glycerin to soften the flowers so that when they dry, they're not too hard. And then once they dry, I will glue them on top of my pumpkins just to give them a little extra something.
there you have it. I hope you learned something new with me today and had fun in the process. If you haven't engraved a pumpkin yet, I bet it's gonna become a favorite tradition for you too. And please do me a favor, if you do end up engraving them, tag me on social media or send it to me in an email. I don't care. You guys get to see what I make all the time. I wanna see what you make. Make sure you're following me either on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever it is, I'm all over the place. I'd love to connect with you. And with that, I'll see you guys here soon over at That Mom with a Laser.